Ronald the Rules Lawyer, Pathfinder 2e's 4 degrees of success system, together with its 3-action economy, are probably the 2 most popular parts of the system. I'll go over the 4 degrees of success today and talk about why it's awesome, and also how it makes the game swingier and also more balanced. I do this as part of my never-ending mission to promote my favorite tabletop role-playing game, Pathfinder 2e, but also in light of the recent Wizards of the Coast exodus due to a variety of scandals this past year, there are many people checking out other systems and also people designing independent systems as alternatives to D&D. I think talking through what Pathfinder does and draw lessons from it will inform and inspire other systems. This is the latest in my Pathfinder Law School series, in which I teach different aspects of the system and also talk about why they're designed the way they are. Quick intro of myself. I am Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I'm a lawyer who has been running tabletop role-playing games for the last 14 years now. I also taught an after-school middle school class of RPGs, and Pathfinder is my favorite system. I love RPGs, and that's what my channel's about. And support my Patreon to allow me to continue what I'm doing, since I don't get paid as a lawyer. If that doesn't make sense to you, check out this video. The thumbnail's on the screen, and being a patron gives you early access to many of my videos and access to exclusive content. First, an overview of Pathfinder's 4 degrees of success system, which I'll call the crit system from now on. It's just easier to say. Through most of Dungeons & Dragons history, which is also Pathfinder's history, there was only a binary of success or failure whenever you rolled the die. During 2nd edition AD&D, critical hits gestated as an optional rule, but were not part of the default rules. 3rd edition codified critical hits into the game and have lived on in 4th and 5th editions. However, what's been true in all of these previous D20 systems, including Pathfinder 1st edition, which was based on 3e, was that only a limited number of results on the D20 roll, usually a 20, could yield a critical hit. Sometimes that range would broaden, but most of the time you needed an actual 20 on the roll. You couldn't affect the likelihood of getting a critical hit. During the design of Pathfinder 2nd edition, one of the lead designers, Mark Seifter, proposed the 4 degrees of success. By the way, Stephen Radney McFarlane is the lead designer responsible for proposing the 3-action economy. Mark Seifter proposed the crit system to accomplish a number of goals, which I hope I cover in this video. I have actually not talked to him directly for this video. So, the very basics. What is this 4 degrees of success system? Well, basically, when you roll a d20 to try to accomplish something, the number you want to reach is called the difficulty class, or the DC. And there are 4 possible results whenever you roll a check. If you hit the target number or exceed it, you have a success, but if you exceed it by 10 or more, it becomes a critical success. It works in reverse as well. -1 to -9 is a failure. -10 or less is a critical failure. That's it. It's a pretty easy to learn and straightforward system. And what Pathfinder does is it defines these different results for many different checks in the game. Your basic weapon strike has a critical success result that doubles the damage you do. Note that not everything has a critical failure effect. The lack of a failure entry just means that nothing happens. Another example is the grapple action. When you succeed, the enemy is grabbed until the end of your next turn. But if you critically succeed, that enemy is restrained. In addition to what grabbed does, restrained means there's a lot of things they cannot do until they escape from those restraints. You have to successfully grapple the next turn to maintain the grapple another round. If you fail this check, you fail to grapple and your target becomes free. And if you critically fail, the target has the option of grabbing you or making you fall prone. Yet another example is what's called your basic saving throw. When an effect does damage, whether that's a spell, many traps, and other effects, a successful saving throw reduces the damage to half, but a critical success reduces the damage entirely. And a critical failure will double the damage that you take. This crit system does 5 things for the game, all of which I think are positive. It leads to more excitement, it promotes tactics and teamwork, it balances save or suck effects. It gives a sense of progression to party members as they level up. And it also makes the game more predictable. More predictable? That seems like a strange thing to say about a system that means more different outcomes and more extreme outcomes. Well, I'll get to that later. First, more excitement. This system obviously leads to more critical successes and critical failures or fumbles. Let's take an example. We have a level 1 fighter and these are some basic statistics, facing off a level 3 Zulgath leader. This is Pathfinder's name for troglodytes. Being a higher level creature, this Zulgath leader with a plus 11 attack bonus is going to be able to critically hit the fighter who has an armor class of 18 by rolling only a 17 on the d20 die. And in Pathfinder 2e, unlike D&D 5th edition, when you score a crit, you double everything, including the flat bonus. So when the Zulgath crits, it's going to score, on average, 23 damage against the fighter. And a level 1 fighter is going to be knocked out while at full health by this critical hit. This clearly leads to more excitement, and of course, it doesn't always happen against players. It can happen the other way around too. The crit system also leads to more variety. There are more possible results on any given check. We already looked at the grapple example. Not only might you grapple the foe, but you might cause them to waste their entire turn trying to escape. Or on the contrary, you might be grappled yourself. I would say the majority of checks in this game involve 4 different outcomes. This makes every d20 roll pregnant with possibility that might swing the story of your game at a moment's notice. The second effect of the crit system is that it promotes more tactics and teamwork. There is a saying in the community that I think I promoted by having every +1 matters pop up on a lot of my videos. I have to thank Dumble Builds, by the way, for making that animation. Now let's break down why every +1 matters, and it has to do with the crit system. First, each bonus kind of doubles if you think about it. There's a great video that's been out there a couple of years called The Power of +1, where the creator, 1DM, breaks down the math behind why a +1, which seems small, is actually not that small. There's a great mathematical breakdown that he shares, and everyone should see it. I'm going to steal some graphics from his video, in fact, to visualize the effect of +1. In most other systems, if you visualize the results of the d20 die in a row where failures are red squares and successes are green, and a critical success is that light green here on the right, getting a +1 bonus to your roll has a 5% chance of affecting the outcome. There's one face of that d20 where it makes a difference. But in Pathfinder 2e, there's actually 2 places where that makes a difference. These pictures show what it looks like when you need to roll a 10 to succeed on a check. Not only rolling a 9, but also rolling a 19 will have a different effect because of your +1 bonus. Another way I like to think about it, if you're mathematically inclined, is that in this diagram, every degree of success is represented by 10 squares, or 9 squares if you're looking at regular failure and you want to be pedantic. So you're moving 10% of the distance within that band with every +1 bonus. Every +1 has a 10% chance of changing your degree of success, as opposed to only the 5% chance in other systems. Note that this works in the opposite direction as well. Imagine our heroes are trying to grapple a very hard to grapple foe, and most of this chart is red. Every +1 they can get to their grapple roll means it is less likely that they will critically fail and become grappled themselves or shoved to the ground themselves. The other reason every +1 matters more than you think in Pathfinder 2e is that there are just more rolls in the system, at least or especially at lower levels. Most RPG players today are familiar with D&D 5th edition, so I'll use that as an example. At lower levels, at least before you reach level 5, most player characters are making only 1 attack roll or check per turn. A level 1 fighter who is not dual wielding will be making 1 attack roll per turn for the vast majority of turns in a day. However, a Pathfinder fighter who, let's say, attacks 3 times in a round, which I don't recommend, by the way, all the time because of this multiple attack penalty, is making 3 checks. This means that if you buff the fighter with the Bless spell or a Bard Song, that +1, which already kind of can be thought of as double what you normally would expect coming from other systems, can be multiplied further by the number of checks that you're affecting because of the greater number of attacks that you can make in Pathfinder. Enemies have more rolls too, and debuffing them has more impact in this system as well. Let's take that Zulgath. If it's a boss, they might get away with making 3 effective attacks against your party members despite the multiple attack penalty. If you spend a single action to successfully frighten that Zulgath, the Frightened 1 condition gives it a -1 status penalty to all of its attacks. You're affecting possibly 3 checks. Not only that, but the Frightened condition lowers all of the statistics of the Zulgath, including its defenses. Let's assume you have a 4-member party and you time that Demoralize right. The fighter makes 2 strikes with a weapon, the rogue makes 2 strikes also. Let's say the cleric makes a weapon strike and casts Void Warp, and the wizard also makes a weapon attack and casts Electric Arc. Now this is kind of an optimistic example, but it's not out of the question, and you've affected 11 different checks with a single action. So because the crit system makes every +1 matter more, this promotes tactics. In Pathfinder, you have 3 actions per turn, and because of the multiple attack penalty, making multiple attacks has diminishing returns. This increases the value of doing other things besides attacking. Many of those actions can set up your upcoming attack or promote allies by providing a numerical bonus, or if you're targeting enemies, a penalty. You have a wider variety of viable actions and only 3 actions to do them with. Those interesting choices are the meat of a tactical game. Well, anyway, I did a law school video on everything you can do in Pathfinder's 3-action economy. If you want to get those tips, check it out. Every +1 mattering also promotes teamwork. In D&D 5th edition, there is a system called advantage and disadvantage. And when something has advantage, you can't give somebody more advantage. And advantage and disadvantage cancel each other out entirely, no matter how many instances you have of either. And so it acts like a light switch. It's either on or off. If you give yourself advantage, nothing your allies can do can improve that advantage more. But in Pathfinder, every +1 matters, and you can stack +1s with each other. It's thankfully not as bloated as in previous editions of Pathfinder and D&D, I must add, because there's only a couple of bonus types that come up in play. But let's take our Zulgath leader, for example. Our fighter can walk up to it and ready a strike action, because he's waiting for the rogue to come up and make attacks from a flanking position, which will lower the Zulgath's armor class by 2. Now both party members get to make an attack against a more vulnerable foe. Back to the point of promoting tactics, the rogue on her own also could simply do a feint action before making her strike, which will make the Zulgath off guard as well. Now, all this sounds great so far. Every +1 is sexy, but it gets sexier when you consider the outsized importance of extremes. I'll illustrate this with an example. So here's our level 1 fighter and level 3 Zulgath leader. I'm going to show you how a +1 can have a drastic effect in reducing the chance of this Zulgath leader critically hitting our fighter, which we saw earlier can knock out the fighter. Normally the Zulgath leader needs to roll a 17 on a d20 die to critically hit. However, if our fighter decides to raise his shield before the Zulgath attacks him, his armor class goes up by 2, from 18 to 20. Now the Zulgath needs to roll a 19 to critically hit the fighter. Just raising his shield has reduced the chance of him being knocked out by 50%. I've not even talked about the fighter's shield block reaction, which can soak damage, but that's beside the point. Additionally, let's say one of the fighter's allies, a wizard, casts Enfeeble, also known as Ray of Enfeeblement, against the Zulgath. Even if the Zulgath succeeds on his saving throw, but doesn't critically succeed, the Zulgath will become Enfeebled 1 and get a -1 status penalty to its attack rolls and damage rolls. Now if the fighter raises a shield after that, the Zulgath needs to roll an actual natural 20 to critically hit the fighter. Together, these actions have reduced the Zulgath's chance of critically hitting the fighter by 75% on that first strike, and made it much less scary as a boss. Remember that critical successes can have ripple effects, and conversely, critical fumbles. First, double damage can knock out a party member. Also, many martial characters at level 5 gain the ability to have critical specialization effects, rider effects, when they critically hit a foe. Effects such as knocking an enemy prone. A critical success on a spell attack can, in this spell's case, add persistent fire damage to a foe, and this is a cantrip. And maybe that foe is a frost giant or an ice-themed dragon, and takes additional fire damage because it has a weakness. This can be a huge swing of luck that can decide a fight. The next thing Pathfinder's crit system does is it balances save or suck effects, also known historically as save or die. We're talking those polymorph spells, banishment spells, flesh to stone spells that take something out of a fight. Now, sometimes these can be fun when they happen against enemies, of course, but also they can not be fun, particularly if it's a big villain that's been built up over the course of many sessions. Many tables want to have an epic throwdown and want to have a feeling that there's real danger, but to have the big villain that's been tormenting them suddenly turn into a squirrel can be seen as some as anticlimactic. Let's say a campaign builds up Vecna, the Archlich. A single casting of Feeble Mind from 3rd edition or 5th edition can remove that Lich's spellcasting entirely. A single roll can win the fight, and also it's usually a roll or effect that's in the hands of a caster, thus exacerbating the notorious martial caster divide. So what happens in Pathfinder? Well, its version of Feeble Mind, called Nevermind, which by the way is a controversial renaming, it uses 4 degrees of success, and the classic effect of removing the target's spellcasting ability is now walled off behind a critical failure result. The target needs to critically fail in order to get the quote-unquote full effect. A regular failure makes the target stupefied 4, so the DCs and attack bonuses of all of their spellcasting is reduced by 4, and on top of that, whenever they cast a spell, they need to do a flat check, a d20 check with no bonuses or penalties, and roll a 9 in order to successfully fire off the spell. 9 because it's 5 plus the stupefied value. If the target succeeds on the roll, they are stupefied 2 for only 1 round. Critical success, of course, ignores the effects entirely. So in Pathfinder, let's say our party encounters a level 12 Lich. Nevermind is a 6th rank spell, so a level 11 wizard can cast it. The Lich needs to roll a 30 on a will saving throw and has a bonus of plus 23. The most likely result is that the Lich will succeed, but not critically succeed. The Lich will not be totally disabled in this fight unless it rolls a natural 1. Meanwhile, because of the design space that 4 degrees of success allows, it's possible to have 2 different grades of partial effects of the spell. Similar powerful spells like Banishment and Baleful Polymorph have a similar treatment. Now there's another mechanic protecting higher level bosses in this game, which I'll get to later. The 4th awesome effect of the crit system is a real sense of progression that characters have when they level up in this game. Let's take our level 1 fighter again, going up against a level 3 Zul'Gath leader. When you level up in Pathfinder, you get +1 to every single one of your important statistics that you're trained in or better. That includes not only your attack rolls and skills, but also your defenses, your armor class, as well as your spell DCs and special ability DCs. And because every +1 matters, you feel that difference with that simple +1 change. This is not even mentioning the feats that you get per level in Pathfinder. Now, different strokes for different folks. I think that this is awesome, and for those who don't like this aggressive scaling as you level up in Pathfinder, there is an optional rule called Proficiency Without Level. But let's see what changes when you level up. Right now, the Zul'Gath leader needs to roll a 17 on a d20 roll to critically hit the fighter. When that fighter levels up to level 2, he not only gets more hit points, but his armor class increases, as well as his attack bonus. But the Zul'Gath now needs to roll an 18 to critically hit the fighter. That's a substantial change. I'm now going to show the chart on creature roll and how that has changed from this level up. When the fighter was only level 1, the Zul'Gath's level was 2 levels higher than the fighter, and therefore would be considered a moderate or severe threat boss. However, the fighter leveling up now reduces it to a low or moderate threat boss. Now let's jump ahead to level 4. Now our fighter's armor class is 21. Now the Zul'Gath leader needs to roll a natural 20 to critically hit the fighter, and this is without the fighter needing to raise a shield or allies to help him out. Now the Zul'Gath leader has been reduced to a standard creature by the game's encounter design system. Now, meanwhile, the tables have turned. It's the fighter who now only needs to roll a 17 in order to critically hit the Zul'Gath. Now let's add one more level to the fighter. This is when the fighter not only levels up, but also goes from expert to master in one group of weapons. He just gained +3 to his attack bonus by leveling up. Now he's the one who can attack the Zul'Gath 3 times and have a fair chance of hitting each time. On the first most accurate hit, he can hit on a 4, and he can critically hit on a 14. On the second hit, he can crit on a 19, and on the third hit, he has a fair chance of hitting. By this point, the Zul'Gath has downgraded into a lackey or a standard creature. Pathfinder's balance is tight throughout all levels, so this is true at high levels as well. A level 11 party facing an adult red dragon, which is 3 levels higher, is facing a severe or extreme threat boss. However, when that same party becomes level 18, those adult red dragons are now mooks to our epic heroes. The next effect of the crit system is that it makes the game more predictable. Now, what the hell do I mean? Didn't I just go through saying how it makes the game more exciting and swingy? Well, Pathfinder becomes more predictable in the ultimate outcome of a given fight. If a game master presents a low threat encounter to a party, they will know almost certainly that the party will prevail and without any deaths. Of course, the party winning is not a foregone conclusion. Tactics and teamwork come into play, especially for severe and extreme fights, and some moderate fights even. And the reason this works is because level means level. A level 5 creature is weaker than a level 6 creature. And having the crit system, or 4 degrees of success, means that every +1 matters more, and therefore the distance between two given levels is stretched wider. Then we combine this with the fact that there are more rolls taking place in Pathfinder because of the 3-action system, and we know from statistics that the more times you roll, the more things tend to gravitate towards an average. And in a fight in Pathfinder, which, by the way, usually lasts several rounds, they usually don't end extremely quickly, there are more opportunities for a creature who is better at something to succeed or critically succeed at something, or not critically fail at something simply because they are better. And the opposite is true for creatures who are worse at something. And this is where I'll discuss yet another mechanic that enforces level hierarchy, let's call it, which prevents anticlimactic boss fights. Now, we've already talked about how save or suck effects are mitigated and how the classic effect is walled off behind a critical failure on a saving throw. We now add to Pathfinder 2e's design toolbox the incapacitation trait. Let's go back to our fight against a level 12 Lich. Our Nevermind spell has the incapacitation trait. What that means is that if the target's level is more than double the spell's rank, then the target's saving throw is treated as 1 degree of success better than how they rolled. So if our level 12 Lich, let's say it's Vecna in this campaign, and is actually level 13, that single level now means that the Nevermind spell will be much less effective against Vecna. The Lich's saving throw has gone up by leveling up, and only needs to roll a 5 to succeed on the roll now. However, that success now becomes a critical success and leaves Vecna unaffected. That's an 80% chance of resisting the spell entirely without debuffing it. There's a 15% chance of rolling a regular failure, which causes it to only be stupefied 2 for 1 round. And there's a 5% chance of rolling a natural 1, which is not a critical failure. It counts as a regular failure. Now this spell sounds kind of worthless. However, you probably shouldn't have expected much targeting the mental faculties of a supercaster. However, this incapacitation mechanic works both ways. Let's go back to the standard level 12 Lich that Pathfinder provides. The Lich can cast Dominate on our wizard, which also has the incapacitation trait. The Lich also has a very high spell DC of 36, and the wizard has a will saving throw bonus of +19. That's a fair chance that our wizard's going to be a thrall of this Lich, at least for part of the battle, because failing means that the Lich controls him, and he gets a new saving throw at the end of each round. A critical failure, which happens if he rolls a 7 or lower, the Lich can control him until it gives a new order that is against his nature, such as killing one of his allies. So this is a pretty scary spell. However, once our wizard levels up to level 13, let's say, he now benefits from the incapacitation trait against this Lich. He has gone from an 80% chance of getting the failure effect to only a 20% chance. His will saving throw bonus is increased by 2. However, against this particular spell by this monster, it effectively is a +12. The incapacitation trait means that lower level spellcasters can't hose your party. Level means level. As an aside, I need to mention that in Pathfinder, it's easy for game masters to make higher level liches, and Pathfinder actually provides stat blocks for higher level liches. There's one more point I feel like I need to make in this video, because more swinginess in a game where the party is supposed to win tends to disfavor the party and disfavor players. Just think about it. In D&D and Pathfinder and most heroic fantasy games, the party wins, and without anyone dying. More randomness means that the needle oscillates farther away from the average. It means not only more instances of the party wiping enemies because of luck, but also enemies wiping the party because of luck. And let's be real, most people who enjoy these heroic fantasy games love it when luck swings against the enemy, but hate it when it swings against the party. So I just want to mention a couple of things Pathfinder does. First, it does rubber banding. Now, I've heard this term used, but I've not found many online affirmations that this is an actual term. But I think it expresses the design goal of some games of allowing people to get out of a hole. You can also call them catch-up mechanisms or the dreaded blue shell in Mario Kart. But anyway, back to the point, we want our heroes to come back from behind. So there are two things that Pathfinder does that mitigates the swinginess that the crit system creates in the game. First, Pathfinder characters have a lot more access to healing than monsters tend to. Not only are there magic spells, but any character, including martial characters, can invest in the medicine skill and the battle medicine feat, or have healing items like potions and heal people in combat. Second, Pathfinder characters have hero points. They start every session with 1 hero point and can earn more hero points from the GM. These are more powerful than inspiration, at least in the current 5th edition of D&D. You can declare you're using a hero point to re-roll a check after you roll. However, you need to accept the new result. So this can mitigate bad luck because you can re-roll those really crucial checks that turn out really bad at the wrong time. But also there's a second use of hero points. If you have at least 1 hero point and your dying value would increase and cause your death, such as reaching dying 4 for most characters, then you can spend all of your hero points to do what's called heroic recovery. You lose the dying condition and you stabilize without your wounded condition increasing. This provides a parachute for when luck swings against a party member. Now, some people may object that this is favoritism for the party members. I'll just say I have never encountered a table that wants to remove hero points. However, if a table wants a more hardcore simulationist approach to the game, they can remove hero points. Also, I wouldn't think of it as a handicap. If you think about it, they represent the heroism of your characters, your actual ability to overcome adversity through healing each other through the power of friendship, or just your inner grit and drive. This is why many Pathfinder 2e fights can be really tense and you're literally coming from behind, which in my opinion makes the game really satisfying. So my closing statement. I think Pathfinder 2e and its designers in Paizo have done a bit of design alchemy and created something wonderful. With the crit system, they have created more excitement in the individual dice roll. There's a greater variety of things that can happen, and there are more extreme results. This means more memorable moments, more dramatic turns. At the same time, it creates more predictability for the difficulty of a fight. There is a working encounter system. The GM can tune the difficulty as desired. The 4 degrees of success system means that level means level. And note that what's more predictable is the difficulty of the fight, not the result of the fight, because tactics and teamwork still matter. Because every +1 matters, working together, planning ahead, setting up actions for yourself and your allies, and because the 3-action economy gives you a whole variety of things you can do on your turn, competing for your limited 3 actions, your decisions matter in deciding the outcome of a fight. Meanwhile, the system mitigates the effects of bad luck against the party by giving them some tools to come back from behind, and notably, they are limited resources, healing and hero points they are, so you can't rely on them to get you out of the hole forever. So that kind of concludes what I wanted to say. I hope that this helps other people appreciate Pathfinder 2e or check out Pathfinder 2e, and also that it can inform other designers about what they might want to plug into their systems. Now, I'm aware that Pathfinder 2e is not the first system to have degrees of success, and I admit that my experience with TTRPGs is relatively limited. I can count on 2 hands those systems I've read. However, I do think Pathfinder pioneers how universally implemented its degree of success system is. It affects nearly every check in the game. But I would love to get comments about other systems and how they implement degrees of success also. So like and subscribe. This is only one in a series of my Pathfinder Law School series. I'll leave a link to the playlist at the end. Also join my Discord if you haven't yet. We're almost 5,000 strong, where people talk Pathfinder and other games. It's also a way to play Pathfinder, as we have a drop-in organized play system. Also support my Patreon. It allows me to continue this channel. You get early access to many of my videos and access to exclusive content. So that's it. I have been Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I'll see you next time.